my parents went deaf very suddenly, sort of overnight, sort of unheard of. It's just bang deaf. And I think imagery, because of that, has been very important. And I know my dad, he came to hear me once. Well, he didn't come to hear me, he just came to watch me. And came to Parlour Baptist, and he told me afterwards it was the most barren place he'd ever been in, spiritually. Because he couldn't hear anything. There was absolutely nothing to sort of contemplate, nothing to look at, lose himself in, nothing. But here this morning, when I've been wandering around, it's just, I must be honest and say that I don't really like church. And just recently we did the Stations of the Cross, really inspired by CitySide Mark to do it. And Joyce and I did every station. It's the only way we were going to get it done. 4 hours sleep a night. And yeah, we had a lot of fun doing it. And we were down there at all hours, and I wrote a poem. I know this is not the place to really... I'll recite these few lines and you see why I don't really write poetry. But I go to church on Saturday now. I find it easier to talk to God when He's not at work. Because on Sundays I've found it very difficult, and I just sort of would love a bit more imagery around our church. And some of these quotes are just absolutely wonderful. And if you come tonight and we look at Van Gogh, be good. While we're here for the Laugh Festival, we've been, well, we have a fair amount of fast food, and I was at Burger King. And I was sort of thinking, I wonder why we don't have fast church, takeaway church, you know, sort of drive-through church would be a lot more accessible, because church isn't very accessible, is it? And I think it would be a good idea, you know, you just sort of drive up. Most churches are on corners like this one. And you just drive up and you push a button and you say, oh, I think I'll have a short prayer, a hymn and half a dozen words of God, thanks. And then you just drive round the back and they would hand it out, you know. Mark would have his little McBaptist hat on or something. But there'd be a bit of a catch, because you'd probably have to keep all these denominations because there's just so many differences. Sort of franchises, if you like, because that's all denominations are, franchises. And because you'd be bound to be asked when you gave your order, do you want communion with that? And you'd probably say, well, where am I? Oh, I'm with the Baptists. What do they do? Oh, they're sort of donut wine people. They're sort of cordy and raspberry juice. And I'm driving here. I can have communion. Of course, the Anglicans, they have wine. I come from an Anglican background. They have wine. They have the actual thing. You know, in Christchurch, the cathedral in Christchurch is the only church in the country that has a liquor licence. That's true. It's true. They've got a little restaurant. It's a visitors centre. They've got a restaurant there. And they've got a liquor licence. But apparently it only applies to the restaurant. You can't ask to see the wine list. Yeah, so, and if you had drive-through, I think the Baptists, they could have sort of, well, they could have a car wash, couldn't they? It sort of goes with the theology, it wouldn't be a problem. But if you didn't like that, you could go down to the Anglicans and get your front windscreen washed. So, you know, you might get behind someone on there about their 6th or 7th communion of the day. They'll be weaving all over the place. Yes, I thought I'd just tell a couple of stories Thought I'd talk about rugby. I've gone off rugby. It's not because the Crusaders haven't done any good. I actually went off rugby during the World Cup. Although I think the French did very well. So I come from a French background. I went off it. When they decided it was so important to win the World Cup that the All Blacks would train with the SAS, I thought that was extreme, Why not just send the SAS and they could nick it? And we had a new uniform, didn't we? It turned out to be all black. 70 journalists covered the unveiling of a new uniform. That's about 17 journalists per item of clothing. Bit of overkill. I think they missed an opportunity. I was fully expecting them, considering the SAS involvement, to add a balaclava. You still have a balaclava, you have black uniform, you play night rugby, you have this SAS training, and you're just about miserable. But you've done all right. So I went off rugby then. But when I was a kid, you can't avoid rugby as a kid in New Zealand. You have to play. And I'd go along to the practices and I could never get in the team, and I'd come home and I'd say to Dad, I could keep going to these practices until the cows come home. I'm never going to get in the team. And Dad just said, wow, it's a long time since I've seen cows in Brighton. But Mum, she had an idea. Now, in deaf sign, there are a lot of shortcuts, and one of them is, this is mother in deaf sign, because mother does all the thinking. And this is father, because father does all the talking. When I was coming here, my youngest son, who's about 19, said, I bet you don't tell them anymore, but I will. This is Dork. It's very handy, I think everybody in church should know it. Quite often I can be speaking somewhere and I can just do that and Ben comes and rescues me. But I don't pray like that anymore, I'm in churches and I say, let's pray. And, don't you people know? Don't do that. Oh, well. Incidentally, that's bullshit. That's very handy. I've seen my kids actually do that when I'm speaking. So my mother had this idea. She said if I volunteered to wash the jerseys, the coach would feel somehow responsible to give me a game at some stage. So I did. I volunteered for her to wash the jerseys. She had to get it done. Well, she washed them and I wrung them dry through one of those crank wringers. And really, really therapeutic. I guess the kids should have taken them off. And this went on for quite some time. And eventually I got a game. We were playing in a tournament, 4 games in one day. All the good kids couldn't play, so I was in the team. I said to my dad, I'm in the team. And he said, that's fantastic. I think I'll come and watch. This is pretty amazing for my father to do that. My dad hardly ever took time off work to come home. And actually one day I came home from school. I'd been sent home from school. I don't know why. I was sent home and Dad was home. He said, what are you doing home from school? I said, what are you doing home from work? He said, I'm the boss. I can do anything I like. And what are you doing home from school? I said, I got 5. It's reinstated. But this game of rugby came about, and I had 2 problems with rugby. One was a major one, one was a minor one. The major problem with rugby was that my mother didn't think I justified expensive football boots. So she bought me these moulded black plastic ones. Hideous things. I think I'm still recovering from the effects of wearing moulded black plastic rugby boots. If they started a support group for moulded black plastic rugby boot wearers, I would join. And I was really embarrassed by them, and I can remember sitting in the changing room and getting changed, everybody's putting on their leather, and I was putting on my plastic. And they handed round the liniment, and I thought, well, if I don't look like a player, I'm certainly going to smell like one. So I've got plenty of liniment on. And then all the players, you know, and all the others, they just ran out to play, ran across the asphalt, you know. I ran out a little while later, like a little Lego man. Been a bit of a delay, I was learning. You should always put your liniment on after you've been to the urinal. They had to have a quick shower. So I got to the sideline there, and they're handing out the jerseys. Now this is where the minor problem occurred. I've never seen a game of rugby in my life. Ever. We played in the playground, you know, you tear around the playground. If you got the ball, someone said, "Give the ball," and you gave them the ball, and otherwise you were tackled by about 53 people. If you gave them the ball, there'd only be, 28 tackle you. That's all I'd ever seen. And so they were handing out the jerseys. I got my jersey, it was number 8. I said, "Well, what does number 8 do?" "Well, you're number 8. "Yes, but what does he do? What's his position?" "Well, you're number 8 or last man down." So it became obvious to the coach that I didn't really know anything about rugby, so he got the scrum together. He said, "This is a scrum, there's a prop, a hooker, a prop, a lock, a flanker, and he said, "You come around the back here and you put your head down in there and you push." Hey, darling. You know he does. This number 8 chap. I didn't like it. I stood up and said, "Well, could I be first man down then?" He said, "There isn't one." "What else does he do, this last man down or number 8? He said, "Well, he jumps in the line out." "Oh, I can do that. Well, I was sort of jumping up and down a bit. I was trying to hide my feet. "I can do that." And I jumped up and down. He said, "Have you been?" I said, "I'm never going again." The game got underway and we played for quite a while before much. My only thing I could really do, you know, I approached it was, if I was number 8, if I stayed between number 7 and number 9, I'd be all right. It sort of works. And the game went on until just before half time when I arrived at this scrum and Mike said, "It's a 5-yard scrum." I said, "Oh, how big are they usually?" He said, "No, we're 5 yards from the try line. If you just keep your eyes open this time, the ball will come out through the scrum, you pick it up, dash around the blind side, you'll score a try." I said, "Oh, fantastic, I can do that." And so I kept my eyes open this time. The ball came out, I picked it up, dashed around the blind side, dived over the try line, scored a try. Absolutely fantastic. Wonderful. There's a lot of high heels over where I was. I was amongst the spectators. It wasn't a try at all. It's horrifically embarrassing. Whistle went, half time came. The coach said, "Pierre, you spend a lot of time with the fullback. Just swap places." So we changed jerseys. This was in the days when numbering was different. And my dad came over and he said, "How are you going?" And I said, "Well, I'm going really well. In half a game, I've gone from number 8 to number 1. He just looked at me as, you know, like fathers do. As if I've stood in something the dog has done or something. In the second half, nothing happened at all. Except right near the end. When this great big guy was charging down toward me, and our players were sort of bouncing off him, and Mike the Mouth was hung round his neck, sort of trailing behind him like a scarf on a southerly. And the coach started yelling out at me. "Majende," said, "do something." What? Offered to wash his jersey? What? I wasn't there because I could do anything. So I decided to back out the way. Just sort of get out of the way. So I took a few steps back. And when he got right up close, I saw his boots. Black leather, high top, 3 stripes, aluminium studs, Don Clark autographs, the best you could buy. I said, oh, nice boots. And he looked at me like that. What? And Mike spun round his neck and hit me on the side of the head, knocked me out, and the whistle went. We won by 2 points. It's fantastic, isn't it? That's not what happened. One of the really neat things about doing this is you can actually retell your story and you can change it. What really happened is he kicked the ball and it went over my head and into the dead, into the in-goal area. So I picked the ball up and went for a bit of a run. And someone said, "Here's the ball," so I gave it to him. And he was in the opposition and he jumped around behind the post, scored a try, and they won by 2 points. I never felt so stupid in all my life. That's what happened. On the way home, Dad said, maybe you should try a game that's not so much washing involved. You know, at the Laugh Festival, I'd leave it there, and it's probably pretty good to leave it there, but it's really interesting that Dad only come to see me play. He never came to see me sit on the reserve bench. You know, sit in church. I wonder if God comes quite often just to sort of see us sitting on reserve benches. This is absolutely wonderful, seeing us all over the floor. It's just great. Not the same like that. I took up boxing after rugby. It happened accidentally, really. My mother came home with this big brown paper bag, and it had 2 pair of leather boxing gloves in it. And I absolutely loved them. Mum hated them. She said she didn't like games where people hit one another. So there'd be rules, she said. That actually come from my uncle, who was a national boxing champion. And Mum said there'd be rules. So after a while, she had her rules and she said, now you can box, as long as you don't hit each other. That's the stupidest rule I ever heard. I said, she hit me. We talked it over and decided we'd be allowed to box as long as we weren't punching one another around the head. We weren't allowed to hit in the head. And Mum used to police this from behind the Venetians in the sunroom. Now the idea was you manoeuvred your opponent around and you sort of looked over his shoulder, and when Mum wasn't there, you hit him in the head. Whack! Hey, you're not allowed to do that. It's in the rules, you're not allowed to hit around the head. Well, that's only when Mum's watching. She's not there. Whack! She's back! She's gone. Whack! Boxing took place on Thursdays. Thursday was the only day my mother wasn't home after school. So boxing took place then. It used to be not just the boxing, but all the role playing that was involved with it. We had a guy, a friend, whose name was Eric. Eric Eyeball. Eric had a glass eye, so he wasn't allowed to box. Eric could take his eye right out. Wonderful thing. I thought it was fantastic. I said to Mum, can I have a glass eye like Eric's? She said, what do you think? You know, when your mother says, what do you think, she's not the least bit interested in what you think. Find out what she's thinking. It's pretty easy. It's the opposite to what you think. She said, do you know how Eric got his glass eye? I said, no, but I think I'm about to find out. He had a bow and arrow and he fired it straight up in the air. The arrow went up, came down, struck him in the eye, and that's how he lost his eye, and that's how he got his glass eye. Can I have a bow and arrow then? Stupid. So Eric used to be our ring announcer, and he would make all the announcements. I was Sonny Liston, who was the defending heavyweight champion of the world at the time. And this particular day, Mum was out as usual, and she'd just recently for Mother's Day, I think, got this dressing gown. Big baggy sleeve satin thing, like boxers wear. I thought I could make good use of that. Add a bit of realism, so I had it on out in the front yard, and I was doing a bit of shadow boxing. And Eric was making his announcement, and I was going to defend my title, and this car came along the road, and I thought, oh, that looks like our car. And I saw it was our car, and Mum was getting out, and she was angry. Yeah, well, you could tell. Dad was still doing 30 miles an hour. She comes straight through the fence, right up close. "What do you think you're doing?" she said. "You can't answer that question, can you?" "No, without getting in an awful lot of trouble. But now you can see what you're doing. You know what you're doing. Best not to say anything. Then you'll get answer me when I'm talking to you. But don't be too hasty, because you'll get don't talk back to me. You can't win, really." So I thought it'd be best to tell Mum the truth. "I'm defending my title and you can be in my corner." I said, "I'm not in your corner, I'm in your face." By now she had the gloves off Mike and she had them on herself. And Dad arrived and Mum said, "I'm going to break you in two." Dad said, "Don't do that, we don't want two of them." "I'm going to knock you into the middle of next week." "Oh, do it, Jess, do it. We could do it with a peace and quiet." "Dad, you're deaf, you get all the peace and quiet you want." She said, "Right, box." I said, "I thought you didn't like games where people hit one another." She said, "Oh, this isn't a game. I brought you into this world and I can take you out." Eric made some announcement, but Mum told him to shut up or he'd lose his other glass on. He'd lose his other eye. So, we boxed. Within about 10 seconds, Mum had hit me straight flush in the face with 3 straight jabs. I said, "You're not allowed to do that, it's in the rules, you're not allowed to hit around the head." She said, "There's nobody in the sunroom." The real Sonny Liston didn't answer the bell in the 7th round, but Mum was having one of those really deaf days. She couldn't hear any bells. All I could hear was bells. I gave up boxing after that. Word got around I'd lost my title to my mum. Dad, every now and again, I'd talk back to my mother and he'd say from behind the paper, "I wouldn't do that. She is the heavyweight boxing champion of the world, The real thrashing the imaginary. Yeah. I did get Eric's glass eye for a while. Had it overnight once. I won it off him playing marbles. Shouldn't have been playing with it, should he? His mother came round and Dad answered the door and he came in and said, there was bound to be confusion because of his deafness. "There's a woman out there, her son's lost his eye and Peter's got something to do with it." I said, "Oh, that'll be Mrs. Gould." "What do you know about it?" He said, "Oh, knocked his eye out with a ball bearing." I was just about to get a thrashing when Mum arrived and said it was his glass eye. Eric was wearing his old one around home. It was all painted white and they wanted his good one back. I don't actually like tying up all my stories. I just look like they can sit there. I never really know what to do with them. They started with kids, and then someone said, "Come out to the prison and tell them there," and so I did, and I just left off all the connections that I used to use as far as illustrations go. And that's how I like to do it. Let make your own, like I made my own when I look at that. And I did did get Eric's glass eye to keep. Maybe I should tell you that. Eric didn't lose his glass eye to a bow and arrow, his real eye. He lost his real eye to cancer. And when he was 18, he died. And he left his good eye in a matchbox. And he gave it to his mum with a letter. And his mum brought it round and gave it to me. And on the letter, Eric said, "You can have this, Pete. I don't need it anymore. I'm going to play I Spy with my third day friend." Eric was a Salvation Army guy, and I knew what he meant. And really, I've never really had a friend like him since. We're going to play a song